Hey, what's up everybody, Commander Radix here, bringing you another episode of Transformers Lore. In this episode, we're going to be covering the Decepticon-Japan Alliance, an unlikely alliance that had dire consequences for Earth geopolitics at the time, and one of the very few, if only, recorded alliances between the Decepticon Empire and a human nation. But before we get into the Decepticon-Japan Alliance, I'd like to mention that over 80% of you watching are not subscribed to the channel yet. If you like what you see in the video and want to see more that Transformers Lore has to offer, please consider subscribing. It'll help the channel grow, and it's a great free way to support me and video production on the channel. And hey, you can always unsubscribe later if you change your mind. But with that out of the way, let's jump into today's topic. By the later 1990s, the Autobot-Decepticon war had slowly been escalating on Earth in the Japanese Generation 1 cartoon universe of Primax 785.06 Alpha. Neither the Autobots, under the command of Supreme Commander Optimus Prime, nor the Decepticons, under the command of Emperor of Destruction Megatron, made any efforts to be robots in disguise. As such, the native humans of Earth were swiftly involved in the war from the start, as early as 1985, when different world powers contributed energy in an effort to help the Autobots leave the planet when it was believed that the Decepticons had been defeated, an effort that ended due to their reemergence. Humanity, particularly the United States, which served as the primary battleground of the war, recognized the Autobots as the benevolent faction of the war and unofficially threw in their support with the Autobots, working with them to produce and improve already existing laser weapons in the human arsenal. The creation of the vast Autobot city was also work done within Autobot and American cooperation. Autobot forces even worked alongside United States Armed Forces, most notably a G.I. Joe mission in 1996 in which Optimus Prime saved Marissa Fairborn, the daughter of G.I. Joe Dashier Fairborn, codenamed Flint. By the late 1990s, the United States officially and publicly announced its intentions to work alongside and cooperate with the Autobots in the war against the Decepticons. However, this was a risky move as the Autobot-Decepticon war was still in a state of flux, with no victor apparent anytime soon. American alignment with the Autobots could have had grave consequences for America and the Earth if the Autobots were defeated or forced to withdraw from Earth. Understanding the careful situation the world was in, the American ally of Japan took a divergent path. Japan wanted to reach a deal with the Decepticon Empire that would spare Japan from any destruction in the event of a Decepticon victory. Meanwhile, as always, the Decepticon Empire was on the hunt for energy sources to power their war machine without being noticed by the Autobots. Japan existed on a network of fault lines on the so-called Ring of Fire, a hotbed of seismic activity. However, the Decepticons were unable to gather energy from the region due to the US-Japan alliance, and Japan would notify the United States about Decepticon activity in its waters, thereby ensuring Autobot intervention. In this very rare scenario, both Japan and the Decepticon Empire had something the other wanted. The entire pact was negotiated by the Decepticon Air Commander Starscream, who operated without orders from the Emperor Megatron. Starscream met with the Prime Minister of Japan in secret in the middle of the night to negotiate the agreement. Japan would allow the Decepticons to deploy Frenzy and Rumble, two Decepticons with the ability to use pile drivers to create earthquakes, into the Japan Trench. There, the two would generate earthquakes in Japan, which the Decepticons would harvest the energy from to convert into Energon. In return, besides the damages of the earthquakes, the Decepticons would not harm Japan. Japan agreed to not notify the United States about Decepticon activity, and the Prime Minister reasoned that the earthquakes in Japan were not unusual and would not catch the attention of the Autobots. That being said, the earthquakes resulted in mass casualties, and the intense earthquakes happening day after day would baffle the Japanese seismologist Professor Onishi, who would hold a lecture on the interesting earthquakes of the past few days, noting that the earthquakes had no earthquake clouds and were, according to his theory, unnatural. This lecture was attended by the science-minded Autobots Perceptor, Beachcomber, and Hound, who suspected Decepticon activity. One thing led to another, and eventually the Autobots uncovered the Decepticon activity, and the secretive Decepticon-Japan alliance was exposed. The Autobots fought the Decepticons out of Japanese waters, and the Prime Minister was lambasted as a coward for working with the enemy and trading total annihilation in return for mass civilian casualties in a succession of intensive earthquakes. The Decepticon-Japan alliance was an interesting chapter in Japanese history when Japan broke off from the American-led diplomatic front in regards to Cybertronian affairs and, in a way, marked Japan undergoing a different foreign policy in regards to the Cybertronians. In the United States, the Autobot-Decepticon War was often fought in open, rural ground that was sparsely populated, but for Japan, any battle that took place in the smaller country would likely take place in an area with more civilians given the significantly higher population density. While American foreign relations with the Cybertronians usually ended in victory, Japanese relations usually ended with tragedy, such as the wave of earthquakes or the destruction of Tokyo less than 10 years later from the falling body of Galvatron. Japan's tragic history with the Cybertronians helps to explain why Japan became the global hotbed for and the leader of anti-Cybertronian sentiment for part of the 21st century. And that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I do videos on a range of topics that includes history and Transformers, so if you're a nerd who likes nerdy things, consider subscribing to the channel. Like I said before, 80% of you haven't subscribed yet. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. Don't forget to check out all my social media links in the description to see what's going on with me, and if you really want to go the extra mile to support me, consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching and have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.